Welcome to Beyond the Press Release, our production Gore column in which we take the time to sit with small cap executives after they put out important news. With us today, happy to have him again because not only is it important news, but it's happy news for all shareholders of Fabled Silver. You're looking at Peter Hawley. He's president and CEO of the company that trades on the venture under the stock symbol FCO, and for our friends in the US under FBSGF. For those of you new to the story, the main asset of the company is their 100% controlled Santa Maria gold and silver property in Mexico. All right. It's a fantastic property. It's in a mining friendly jurisdiction. Multiple major operators are in the entire neighborhood. It's a high grade underground mine with a rich mining history. And it's already got a silver equivalent 43101 with some great results that have come out throughout 2021. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. Today, shareholders of Fabled woke up to copper news, and specifically the headline, Fabled Silver Gold announces proposed spin out of copper assets into Fabled Copper. Shareholders own shares in both companies, FCO Silver, FCO Copper, and shareholders are going to get one copper share for every 5 shares they own of Fabled Silver. So this is great news. Peter, let's talk about it. Welcome back.
Thanks, George. Thanks. You explained it all, actually. I can just leave now.
Well, hey, no, there's more details. We want to know more, but that's the highlight that's going to make everyone sit on the edge of their seat. So first of all, 1 for 5, it's a great day for Fabled shareholders.
It is. In these days, it's not very often you get something for free. That's for sure. The other thing is that what the shareholders didn't know, that we had to really work with some taxation advisors on this issue, because we didn't want to create a taxable event for the silver shareholders, whereas you're getting a gift now, pay us or whatever. So we had to structure it under what they call a plan of arrangement. So the whole thing of understanding how the structure works to be to the benefit of the shareholder took a while, but now we've got the plan forwards, the plan of arrangement, very straightforward. The Fabled Silver shareholder that invested for silver, for every 5 shares of silver you have, you will get 1 share of copper.
That's in effect, I don't want to call it a dividend because that's not, but just for layman's terms, it's like a 20% dividend. That everyone
it is.
Today.
It is. Yes, it is in that sense. That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah. With tremendous upside, because now there's exposure to copper. So before we talk about the assets, let me ask you first, what's the ballpark? I know you can't give a specific time, but a proposed plan of arrangement is something that companies quite often follow when they're spinning out assets like you are. So has your team given you a ballpark ETA for when this might be complete?
I think what'll happen, George, there's 2 or 3 things, and up to a certain point we can control the timeline, and then it's off on its own timeline. So I think somewhere's and already we're at, as far as the documentation for the plan of arrangement, we're probably going to be finished that next week. So very shortly we'll be applying to the British Columbia judicial system for a court ruling to have the special ordinary meeting of shareholders for the spin out of the copper assets. So I think that meeting will probably be held the latter part of July. And at that meeting, it's actually the Fabled Silver shareholders who vote whether they want to do this or not. Simple as that.
Hard to imagine that they're going to vote against it. That's for sure.
Well, some people will, some people won't. Tell me the logic of why you'd want to vote against it. I don't know.
No, I find it highly. I'm sure you get 1 or 2 people that everyone has their reasons, but look, I haven't seen one spin out fail before, and in fact, they're usually pretty successful. And not that we're telling anyone, we're giving anyone a view of the future, but they're typically pretty successful. I'm impressed though that you think it's going to be that meeting will happen end of July, because I've been through some other, like I said at the beginning, I've been through some other plan arrangements, and 6 months seems to be really fast. I've seen a couple go 12 months,
Yep.
and that's just
Yep.
the way it is.
Yep.
How are you guys able to move this along quicker for everybody?
I think the biggest thing is that the copper properties called the Muskwa properties or Muskwa Project, they're held by a private subsidiary, which Fabled Silver owns, and the private subsidiary
Okay.
is called Fabled Copper Corp. So it's not it's not taking an asset out of Fabled Silver and putting it into Fabled. As soon as I start moving assets around, and turn, oh boy, that takes time, George. But because it's in its own package, and it's that package that's going to go public, then that saves me a tremendous amount of time.
Okay, that's fantastic, and that makes sense because you've already got it packaged within a corporation. Yeah, so you're not moving assets. It's more like you're moving the corporation. So let's talk about the assets. Clearly, copper, the price of copper has been a catalyst for this, and the outlook for copper clearly is a catalyst for this. But tell us, how good are these copper assets? Because they still got to be economic, they still got to be viable, and they're, and some are not. Doesn't matter how high the price of copper is. What do we know about Fabled Copper's assets, and why you and the board have chosen to make this move right now?
Well, one is certainly the price of copper and where it's going. I mean, it's at record highs right now, and there's, if anything, it's still got tremendous legs to go. So it's price of copper is driving it. But we're going to be coming out with a very detailed press release, along with some internal videos from the company, including drone footage, which will be quite interesting, George.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and that will explain the assets in detail, but I'll try to give you a kind of a big picture why these are kind of more than just little copper showings in the middle of nowhere. These copper properties are located close to the border of the Yukon in British Columbia, and the access to it or to them is from an area on the Alaska Highway called Toad River. And there are three groups of claims. And the three groups of claims, not only do they have numerous copper occurrences on them, like crazy copper occurrences, but each individual claim block, if you want to call it, or sub-property or whatever, each one has a deposit. Not a showing, a deposit. And when I say
that, how is that's something, there's been a lot of historical work obviously done there then.
Well, yes, and that's right. And so what the story behind one of these projects or properties is that in the late 60s, a company went in and made the discovery of what they called the Magnum Mine. And it was the Magnum Vein. And this vein goes, you can see it, and it goes up one side of the mountain, across the top of the mountain, and back down the other side. And the distance from the valley floor to the top of the mountain is a little over 2,000 feet. So you can see it 2,000 feet vertically and across for 1.6 kilometers, and down the other side 2,000 feet, and it's still going underneath it. So they came along in the late 60s, drove a road from the Alaska Highway into there, punched a hole in the side of the mountain to get inside, did all this before the winter hit, because you got to remember everything's going to be snowed in. You're high altitude here. You're probably up to, I don't know, you're probably 6, 7, 8,000 feet, going up to 11,000 feet in the higher areas. And once they got inside, they're all set for the winter. Who cares what happens outside? I'm
Smart people.
Yeah, it's like one of the 7 dwarfs or something like that. So Grumpy and the boys all stayed locked up underground. No, but they did all the development during the winter, and they would shovel the development ore out over the talus slopes on the various levels. and to the point where some of these levels go completely through the mountain from one side to the other side, George.
Wow, that's extensive, Peter. I thought, you know, you might have somebody who did some trenching, some sampling, maybe a couple of
But
drill. This is extensive, extensive work and therefore knowledge that you guys have.
yeah, and they put drill bays in there and they sampled everything. We have it. We have all the reports to do the metallurgical work. We have the feasibility report at that time. But also, more importantly, we actually have the production records. And they had outlined, now you have to remember under today's nomenclature, 43-101, et cetera, this is all historical. I mean, that's the way it is. We have probably in the last month, I think I've rounded up the last piece of paper of the plans and sections and monthly reports and everything else pertaining to this thing. So one of the projects this fall coming up for the team is they're actually going to create once we do our, if you want to call it, digital overprint on the surface of the Magnum Vein and everything else, we'll be building a 3D internal model of the actual deposit as defined by the previous work of putting the various additives through there. And they had outlined, George, in a reserve, you know, of course, late 60s or whatever, but they had outlined a little over 200 million pounds of copper grading 3.15% copper.
And that grade for that area, how relatively speaking good of a grade is that?
Oh, it's an excellent grade for,
because that sounds like an enormous amount of.
and substantial widths. So they had extracted about 100 million pounds of that. And meanwhile, a sister vein next to it called the Eagle, they went in and started developing that, going to do the exact same thing. And they put all the development levels into that. And then the early 70s, I believe it's 72 or 73. I'm an East Coast boy, so I don't really pay attention to what's happening on the West Coast in that point in time. But I guess Ed Broadbent and the NDP came in and they put a moratorium on mining.
Because I was going to ask you, I was going to say, Peter, devil's advocate, if it's so, if these assets are so great,
yep,
why did somebody leave them? So it sounds like they were forced out by the government back in the early 70s. Otherwise, you may not have these today.
No, absolutely. And then, you know, for various reasons, various people staked them, and there's a little bit of work done here and some work done out there. And there was a couple of 2 years in a row, a very reputable exploration company did work over the area and created quite a database of which we've been putting into, you know, XYZ, ARC info, map info type of GIS system. But the cool thing about all of this, George, is so what the silver shareholders are getting is they're not getting a little copper showing here. You're getting a deposit. Like I wouldn't want to know in today's dollar how much money was spent on these things. It's just an insane amount. So
well, you're literally talking about drilling right through mountain, like they're creating tunnels right through mountains. So it's an enormous amount, which means it was economic back then, obviously, right? Someone had to pay for that bill.
Absolutely. Sure it was. You know, and copper was 80 cents a pound.
Today, let me check. I'm going to check real time right now. 457. That's quite that's quite a bump.
It is. So the thing is, there's another one of these veins called the Neo vein, similar to the rest. It hasn't been developed. I actually saw it in 2017. I flew in there with a chopper and looked at it for a few days. And that goes, you know, up the hill and down the other side. And we've been doing various things on it. And then there's about another friggin', I don't know how many vein sets going that people have yet to follow up on. So it's a very well endowed copper rich area, of which previous work includes airborne geophysics, ground geophysics, stream sediment sampling, all kinds of work. I mean, and we've been taking all this and like mad people in the last 6 months of putting it all into kind of a one format that we can all use. And as such, I got to jump on everyone, and we put a team together of approximately 10 people, George, that, coming up, we're sending a crew in of 10 people and helicopter support for minimum a couple of months. And the fun part is this is cutting edge stuff we're doing to the point, and you and I talked about this funny, and I never, when we talked about this before, I never thought I'd be pulling this off, but yeah, we're using drones, and we're we're high resolution drones to fly them through the mountains. There's no vegetation. We're above the tree line, so we can see all the rock, and these things fly in, and we know not only is it shooting out and like a laser beam reading all the topography and put in an XYZ, so you can create these 3D mountains of everything around you, but it's also shooting the footage in ultra, high K, 5K resolution drone footage, of which each one is a picture in itself. And I was just looking at some footage in which I think we sent to you, George, if you guys want to look at it. But it's the drone flying by the Magnum Mine, and then you can see this, sulfide big band going through the mountain and around the mountain, and you're flying along it and everything else, and then the drone starts flying in closer. And I mean, you're talking, the scale here is huge, right? And you start flying with the drone, it doesn't look very big or anything else, and then all of a sudden you just start zeroing in further, because resolution on this is 30 centimeters, and then the next thing you know, you start seeing malachite sticking out of the wall. And
oh man,
oh yeah, no, very, very.
And this is something, the efficiency that it creates for Fabled, because without this you would have had to, I mean, it's several magnitudes of efficiency, time, energy. I mean, 30 centimeters resolution. I mean, this got to be a dream come true for you, for someone who's successfully exited a couple of companies and mines in the past, for you to have this kind of technology available to you today. Almost unthinkable.
Well, it is, because if you it's like, turn the hounds loose. There used to be that saying, let loose the hounds. Well, in this case, it's let loose the drones, right? Because now, the drone covers such a large swath of area and everything else, that when the person comes back, whoever's playing with the drone for the day comes back, and they just, okay, everyone will do a drop on everyone's laptop or tablet, and everybody's looking at the same footage, and you're looking for sulfides, and you're going to see them with copper, malachite, or whatever, and as soon as you find one, the XYZ, the exact 3-dimension point of where that is located, not only on the hill but picture wise and everything else. And you can say to the guy next to you, hey, okay, Gord, here's the XYZ of that point where that oxide, copper oxide, is coming out, and he gives it the helicopter pilot. Next morning off they go, and zip, right there.
And you're just sitting, and there's Peter Hawley and his team, essentially your video game players. I'm assuming you're back at a base or a camp or your own homes, and you're just watching this, right?
Well, you know what? One of the mines we built in Mexico, we actually had fiber optic cable underground. It was one of the first mines for that, George. And one of the things was that the fiber optic cable, what it allowed us to do, I think it was on the 8th level, we had an underground garage, and we could bring in these big, like 6-yard scoops and remote control scoops and everything else, and we could do diagnostic on it, just like they do in your garage here, and hook it up. And then the dealership in Sweden would be looking at the diagnostics of this scoop, right, from underground to the fiber optic cable, and saying, oh yeah, you need a new fuel pump, we'll send it to you, or something like this, or whatever, right? And then that same scoop, you from your office in Val-d'Or, Quebec, be sitting there with joysticks, driving it underground.
I was actually kidding about playing video game. It sounds like it is.
You can, yeah. And the same thing,
That's
legal at Laurent, yeah, you can do, yeah, you can remote control these things now. It's absolutely crazy.
The good news, Peter, is you're so much more efficient today. The bad news is, well, you thought there might become a day when you'd have to retire, because we all at some point maybe get a little too old for that kind of rugged lifestyle. But if you could do it from the comfort of your office as a video game player, you're going to be good to go till 100.
Yeah, well, you got to remember though, George, there's always got to be people to go in the field and do it.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
And at least till this point in time. Pretty soon they'll have a drone with a little friggin' drill bit on the end of it, like a little diamond.
You know it.
Take a little core sample and fly off or whatever. Yeah, no. So anyways, for the shareholder of Fabled Silver, you're going to get, for every 5 shares, you're going to get 1 copper share. And Fabled Copper will become its own entity. It will not drain any cash from Fabled Silver.
That's fantastic.
At all. You want to call it the exchange ratio is good to the date of the special meeting. When that's held and everybody votes of whether they're going to do it or not, that the next day after that meeting or the time 1 hour after that meeting, if you became a Fabled Silver shareholder, sorry guys,
well, that's a great way to entice people, right? I mean, Fabled Silver, we didn't talk about today because we're talking about the copper side, is already an incredibly promising company as it is. But if you got this as a kicker and it's and you reduce your cost base by 20%, and I say 20% because you get 1 for every 5. And I think that, Peter, thanks so much. Congratulations on, having the foresight to hold the copper assets in a subsidiary that's 100% owned by Fabled Silver. Maintaining the assets. I'm sure there are times when people thought, hey, should we maintain these things, or should we get rid of them, or whatever the case may be. So just the fact that you guys had the wherewithal, the knowledge, the foresight to hold them, maintain them, and now bring them to the market under the Fabled umbrella, congratulations. Hats off to your team.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much, George. And please look at that drone footage. You'll like that.
Well, I guarantee you, as I marked it here at the 16-minute mark, we're gonna be putting that drone footage. It'll already have, now it's like we're Back to the Future, right? It'll already have played when we were talking about 6 minutes ago. I'm gonna make sure people saw that.
I think that I saw that in one of the Terminator movies.
Yeah, it's like, whoa. No, we got it for you, and we'll be all, and I'm sure by now everyone's watching this saying, I already saw it 6 minutes ago, and it was something exciting to see. So, Peter, we're going to have you back on because, it's not as if Fabled Silver wasn't already busy and you guys are waiting on rush assays on that side. Now we got Fabled Copper also to follow throughout the summer. So what a great way to head into the long weekend for all Fabled shareholders who are Canadians. I know they're worldwide shareholders, but for the Canadians, we're going into our long weekend this weekend, and I think this is a great way to do it. You gave us all a reason to have another another glass of beer.
Well, you're going to take advantage of a long weekend. Look at me now. I got 2 companies to figure out.
I'm sitting in the catbird seat. I get to sit back while Peter potentially, I got to say this, potentially makes me and all Fabled shareholders really rich. So, good for us, not so good for you, but we'll take it.
Yeah, George, is getting bad when I start signing little notes to people, memos. Peter, paper pusher.
Well, that's why you are who you are. But look, we all know your value. We all know what you've done in the past, and that you're a stalwart and a real winner in this industry. So we're lucky to have you on our side. Please make sure to enjoy yourself. Take some time off. You deserve it. What you're doing for everybody. The mountain's going to be there on Monday. So if you take a day or 2 off to enjoy it, my friend, because you've earned it and your whole team has earned it.
Thanks, George. Appreciate it.
For everybody at home, you've been watching or you've been listening to my podcast on Spotify, Google, Apple, or your favorite podcast platform. To Peter Hawley, he's president CEO of Fabled Silver Gold, trades on the venture on the stock symbol FCO. For our friends in the US, on the QB under FBSGF. For those of you new to the story, because you probably saw this headline and said, hey, I got to take a deeper dive here. You've watched what Peter's had to say, or by podcast, you've listened to what he's had to say. Your job now is to start your due diligence. 2 ways to do that. Part 1, get to the Agoracom hub for Fabled and take a look at their profile page, because we know that resource exploration, geology isn't always the easiest thing to understand on first blush. So what we've done is given the layman's overview, really good overview of what the company is doing and what it's got. Once you have a handle on that, you can see the URL right above Peter's head there. Hop over to the company's website, fabledsilvergoldcorp.com. Do your deeper dive due diligence, and then you got to make your own decision. But given where precious metals prices are going, we saw the collapse of Bitcoin today, actually, at one point down 35%. And given where the price of copper is going, because the world is reopening, it's really starting to head into overdrive, and it's going to need copper. Fabled has put itself in what looks like a favorable position. I can't actually say that for you. You're going to have to determine that for yourself. But do your due diligence. Just don't tell us 12 months from now that we didn't tell you so. Have a great day. Have a great weekend, Canucks. See you next time.
Okay.